to order. This is the time and place as advertised for our work session, May 6, 2024. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor. In consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Are there any citizen comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the active agenda, Roman number 4. Item A, Resolution 2024-14, considering declaring various items of City of Lewiston property to be surplus and providing for the public auction of said surplus property. This is an action item. And councilors, if you need more information on that, we can ask our finance director, Amy Gordon, to come forward, or I would entertain a motion. Councilor Schroeder.
I move to approve Resolution 2024-14.
Second. It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Councilor Kleberg to approve Resolution 2024-14. Is there discussion? Clerk Brockie.
Council President Kleberg.
Aye.
Councilor Lidke.
Aye.
Councilor Forsman.
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder.
Aye.
Councilor Klein.
Aye.
Councilor Spittelmeyer.
Aye. Thank you, councilors. Motion carries. Next up, we have Roman number 5, discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require the city council to vote on that item. Item A is personnel policy, reviewing the City of Lewiston's personnel policy for updates and changes. This is an action item. We have our Human Resources Director, Nikki Province, here with us. Nikki, welcome. Please remember to speak up loudly and clearly and introduce yourself for the record.
Yes, Nikki Province, HR Director for the City of Lewiston. If you remember in March, I brought you some policy changes. We didn't really move forward with those changes, so I wanted to bring them back and see if I could get some movement on these policies that I'd like to update for the personnel policy. I tried to keep it concise and give you just those edits instead of the whole personnel policy to see if we could work through it. I think the idea here in talking with the mayor is to review each policy and decide whether council approves or does not approve. And so those that we approve, we can bring back in another meeting with the personnel policy in whole for a resolution. So these are just approving the changes. We'll be back with the entire personnel policy for resolution. You all should have received a copy of those changes. And if you just want to, we'll get started with section 203. You can see my edits in relation to harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. Were there any comments, current concerns?
Councilors, if you've had a chance to review these suggested edits and you have no comments or questions, then it would be appropriate to make a motion to adopt these changes. And as Director Province said, whatever changes are adopted today will come back in an updated personnel policy manual and brought before the council in resolution form for changes. So with that, councilors, I would entertain a motion on section 203, policy against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation.
I'm sure I got, but I'll make a motion, but you might have to help me out with that. Okay, I move that we approve section, what was it again?
Changes to section 203, yeah.
The changes to section 203. Thank you.
It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, second by Councilor Klein, to approve the changes to section 203, policy against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. again, the personnel policy manual for the city of Lewiston. Remember, counselors, this is your policy manual. Is there further discussion? Counselor Forsman?
I just wondered why, I'm sure there's a reason, but why we changed instead of city, having the word city vehicle machinery equipment and then just having it without the word city on section 205, drug-free workplace.
We're doing 203 right now.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's the motion.
I'm jumping ahead. I'll come back.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Province.
Section 205, drug-free workplace. This is not the policy in its entirety. This is just a section of the policy that I'm requesting changed. And basically what we've done here is we're trying to take out the confusion for people. So those changes just make it a little bit more clear in the event that one of these things happen, that a drug test is performed. And since option 2, serious injury requiring immediate emergency room is already said, number 3 is just repeating it, so we're just removing that sentence.
Okay.
Are there further questions? Motions? Counselor Klein?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the edits for section 205 of the personnel policy.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Klein, seconded by Counselor Schroeder to approve changes to section 205 drug-free workplace of the City of Lewiston Personnel Policy Manual. Is there further discussion? Counselor Spickelmeyer?
Yeah, I think it was this question that Councilor Portman was gonna ask about the post-accident testing in the city, why the city, it was taken off there. Doesn't that leave it general if you remove the city vehicle part out?
Well, we were trying to say that whether it's the city vehicle or a citizen's vehicle, either way, they should be tested. So not just damaging a city vehicle, but damaging another person's vehicle. That make sense?
I hear what you're saying.
We wanted it to be inclusive, that it's not just if a city vehicle were to be damaged.
Wouldn't that leave it open to their own vehicle?
What do you mean? Their own vehicle?
It just states a vehicle. Like if they wreck their vehicle,
Would be while they're in
it
the,
doesn't say anything
performance
about
of
while
work.
they're at work, does it?
well, I mean, see what you're saying, but this would be post-accident while they're in the performance of work. And then it would be based on the city's risk manager, HR director, department director to initiate the testing based on the circumstance. So,
Okay, counselors, further discussions, motions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, counselors. Director Province?
sure, next section, 218, motor vehicle record check. You'll see that I struck out each January, and the reason is because I wanted to be able to give us an annual check, not having it be just January. Things happen. For example, last January, we had a major event. This January, we had someone out of the office on long leave. And so just by making it annual ensures that the risk manager can do it at least once a year and not just in the month of January. And then we added a sentence that requires the motor vehicle record check be, that an employee participate, and that refusal could result in disciplinary action. Obviously, because we want to make sure that we're checking motor vehicle records for those that are driving city vehicles. And so if somebody refused, it answers the question of a refusal.
Counselor Schroeder?
I move to approve 218 motor vehicle recheck.
by Counselor Schroeder, second by Counselor Speckelmeyer to approve changes to section 208 motor vehicle record check. Is there further discussion or motions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you, counselors. Director Province.
Next is section 307 telecommuting agreement. This is just a very minor change, basically taking out if the employee and manager agree to just simply saying for telecommuting that is ongoing or not short in nature. And this is just a portion of the policy. Again, it's not the entirety. It's just the portion I'd like.
Counselor Schroeder.
I'll make a motion to approve section 307 telecomputer. Okay, that word, I'm sure. Telecommuting, thank you.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Schroeder, second by Counselor Speckelmeyer to approve the changes to section 307 telecommuting agreement in the city personnel policy manual. Is there further discussion or amendments? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Province.
Next is section 405 background checks. There's just been some minor update to background checks, and then we did a pretty significant editing to criminal history. There was a lot of conversation related to this one, and there was a little bit of feedback that I got from council specific to criminal history, and hopefully we were able to change the language to satisfy what several of you wanted. I can tell you part of the reason for my suggestions is for hiring. So the way the language reads right now, it's very limiting to anybody who's had a misdemeanor or felony. And that really limits our then recruitment pool. And so we have had situations where we've had to not hire employees because of maybe having 2 misdemeanors instead of 1 within the last 5 years, or having a felony at all in their lifetime. So this really just says that there are certain criteria that are listed in which the city will review for a person's criminal history to determine whether there's any concern over the history and their employment with the city. We changed it to the city because that would allow an opportunity to not just have the department director, HR, but also the mayor to be able to help make a decision on a questionable criminal history. So this was very much kind of reflective of Boise's policy. So we kind of use them as a resource to help us figure some stuff out. And then also, our insurance carrier is asking that we do background checks on current staff every 3 to 5 years who work with children and vulnerable adults. So we did include some additional language that would cover that requirement. So that would probably be your library, parks and rec, and transit areas.
So question on the first paragraph, I think it's the second sentence, it says, additionally, certain volunteer positions are also subject to background checks, and the next sentence is, all employees and volunteers are subject.
Yeah, that's kind of a duplicate. If you wouldn't mind, we could modify it to just simply take out that additionally certain volunteer positions are subject to a background check. I think the intent here is that the majority of our volunteers are with Parks and Recreation and Library, and we just want to ensure that they are having, those that work with children are at least having a background check before bringing on as a volunteer.
So you would delete that?
I could delete that one
Second
sentence if
sentence.
you were all in agreement to do that.
Page and paragraph, Director.
First paragraph, right under 405 background checks, there's a duplication. It says, additionally, certain volunteer positions are also subject to a background check. And then it says all employees and volunteers are subject to background checks at any time during the course of employment or service of the city. And that really was added to get that 3 to 5 years background check added. So if it'd be your preference, we could just strike that additional certain volunteer positions if you feel like it's a duplicate.
So we have to make a motion to change that sentence?
I think, Counselor, we all heard that, so I struck it through my copy, and everybody's following along, so we have that recorded. Spickmeyer,
Motion to accept the corrections to section 405 background checks.
Second.
Counselor Lickey. Moved by Counselor Spickmeyer, second by Counselor Lickey to approve the changes to section 405 background checks of the City of Lewiston Personnel Policy Manual. Is there further discussion or amendments, changes? If not, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, councilors. Director Province.
Next is section 503, advancement within salary range. Really what we did here is just make an adjustment to address those employees who are in an acting position, meaning they're acting at a higher capacity than their position for a certain duration. It could be short-term or long-term. We're just trying to address then how their step dates are modified during that acting appointment.
Counselor Schroeder.
I move that we approve, 503, section 503 advancement within the salary range.
Been moved by Counselor Schroeder, second by Counselor Spickmeyer to approve section 503 advancement within salary range as modified. Those in favor, please signify by saying
Can
aye. Whoop, Counselor Lickey, pardon me.
have a discussion on that. The only other thing that I would have liked to have seen or would like to see in that section is that we stipulate that if a department is going to do anything more than a single step for a particular employee, that show up in their budget request for that budget year. So make sure that we're being stringent on our step increases and ensuring we're covering those in our budget.
Yeah, we did have a discussion regarding that and whether we should include it. Currently, there is no language in here regarding a double step, so we would be adding language to allow for a double step. Right now, it's just a part of the budgeting process and at the mayor's discretion. So we elected not to put it in the personnel policy, but make it a part of the budgetary process.
Counselor Lickey.
As long as it's brought forward and transparent, that we have the ability to make sure that we're controlling our budget. If the mayor's happy with that as the process, then I can move forward. Just as we move into budget year, I think that as city council, this is our document, so that was the suggestion.
Counselor Klein, or Counselor Lickey, I appreciate that. It is handled, last year we handled it in the budget process, and that was the direction staff was given again this year, was to handle it through the budget process, and it appears to be working at this time.
Yeah, we did hear you. We had conversations both with the finance director, the mayor, and we're trying to figure out what would be the best place to make sure that it's ensured. And leadership is well aware that those double steps should be included in budgetary requests and not outside of that.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, you have a motion before you, section 503 is modified, moved by Counselor Schroeder, second by Counselor Spickmeyer. Is there further amendments, discussion? If not, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Counselor or Director Province.
Yes, section 510, really the only addition here is just a reference to the city's administrative 980 schedule policy that's been established. And I just wanted to make sure and make note of that so that people who are on the 980 are reflected back to the policy that has specific requirements.
Director, would you inform the council what that policy is?
Yeah, so we have a number of administrative policies that are approved by the mayor regarding specific operations. One of them was a 980 that we developed that basically established a process. A 980 schedule is where you have every other Friday off, and those days that you are working, it's a 9-hour day, and the Friday you work is an 8-hour day. And so we just wanted to establish a requirement that it can't be done within your first year, that there's a form that you have to complete with HR to make sure that we are in accordance with with FLSA and pay, so that's really what the policy addresses. And we do keep our administrative policies online with the personnel policy, so they are available for your reference.
Director, councilors? Councilor Klein?
I move to approve the edits for section 510 of the personnel policy.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Klein, seconded by Councilor Schroeder to approve the edits to section 510 established work hours work week. Is there further discussion or amendments? Not those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you, councilors. Director Province?
Yes, the next section is 602 vacation leave. There's just one minor modification, striking extended and adding medical. And so this is just saying that while on a long medical, beyond your family medical leave eligibility, you will not be earning accrued leave. However, there are other extended leaves where that may not be applicable, such as military leave. So this is just making it specific to medical leave and leave without pay.
Councilor Spicklemeyer?
Motion to approve changes to section 602 vacation leave.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Spicklemeyer, seconded by Councilor Forsman to approve changes to section 602 vacation leave. Is there discussion or motions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, councilors. Director Province?
Yes, section 604, family medical leave. I brought this to you last March. Basically, it's modifying that an hire will not be provided an FMLA notice, as we have already included employee rights and responsibilities under the FMLA within our employee handbook. So, it's the requirement.
Councilor Schroeder?
I move to approve the section 604 family medical leave.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Councilor Forsman to approve changes to section 604 family medical leave. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Province.
Section 610, military leave. You'll see this is probably the most editing that we've done on all the sections. And I coordinated with the city's legal team to make these updates in compliance with USERRA. Our previous policy was not quite in compliance, and this then brings us into compliance with military leave. So this just establishes a new military leave policy.
Councilor Schroeder?
I move to approve section 610 military leave.
Second. It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Councilor Kleber to approve changes to section 610 military leave of absence. Is there further discussion or amendments? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you, councilors. Director Province?
Right, chapter 10, disciplinary action. Really, I'm just removing the performance improvement plan section to go with the introduction and assigning it the ability to be used in multiple different disciplinary processes. So not only within disciplinary probation, but it could be utilized also in official reprimand or suspension. It's not always just used during disciplinary probation. So I just want to make sure that our employees, supervisors understand that it can be used for other progressive discipline.
Councilor Schroeder?
I move to approve chapter 10 on disciplinary probation, sorry.
Second.
Disciplinary action. Yes.
Been moved by Councilor Schroeder, second by Councilor Spickmeyer to approve changes to chapter 10 disciplinary action. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Director Province?
Yes, last one, section 1506, use of communications. Really, we just wanted to address here with our employees that email should be used for business purposes and further clarify that personal use of city email should be at a very minimal or insignificant amount if it wasn't already understood.
Now, the shouldn't it be a shall?
If you,
Should is suggestive, huh?
I think only because we're not saying you can't use it at all, we're just saying it should be de minimis, very little. So, it's your policy though, if you feel more shall would be more appropriate, we can modify that.
Thoughts?
Depends on who's the judge of how much is too much.
How much is should?
Yeah.
Well, we say minimal or insignificant amount, which. Yeah, and I think if you change it to shall, that means that you could not use it minimal or insignificant. So we would have to strike that.
Counselor Spickmeyer?
Motion to approve changes to section 1506, use of communications and computer systems.
Second.
You have a question? or
No, I was just gonna do that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Counselor. It's been moved by Counselor Spickmeyer, second by Counselor Klein to accept the changes to section 1506, use of communications and computer systems. Is there further discussion or motions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make
Counselor Lakey?
another motion. I would like to move that we amend page 6 of the current, page 5 of the current policy under City of Lewiston Personnel Policy, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 5, changing the words for cause to at will while also altering the document as needed. And I would also like to see a statement that explains that while employment may be terminated at will, it may not be terminated for reasons that are discriminatory or retaliatory as defined by applicable law.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Litke, second by Counselor Klein, to make changes to page 5 of the City of Lewiston Personnel Policy Manual, changing the words for cause to at will. And the rest of that, Counselor, you're gonna have to write that down or submit it if this passes.
I have it here for you.
Okay, is there discussion or further amendments? Counselor Spickmeyer?
So then in the final approval of the policy, then we'll see it all written out. Okay.
Yeah, because there'll be a couple other sections that would need to be modified, such as a pre-discharge hearing section and a probation period would have to be modified as well.
Discussions, comments, questions? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Councilors, are there further amendments to the Personnel Policy Manual?
It's not really an amendment yet. I'm
Councilor
kind of
Forrest?
more curious. I know some companies will have like in their personnel policy, or I don't know if it's maybe always personnel policies, or maybe just kind of the way the management does their maintaining of their employees, but like having maybe every 6 months or required one-on-ones with their employees and how their performance is doing. Do you guys do anything like that?
Yeah.
I mean, not in space, I don't know your guys' day-to-day, so I don't,
Yeah.
I know it's not, I don't recall seeing it in the employee handbook per se, but.
Yeah, the personnel policy and I think all collective bargaining agreements require like an evaluation. I want to say all of them. They all have probation periods, but we do an annual evaluation. We have a software program, NeoGov, and it's a performance, we have a performance module that puts in an evaluation annually at minimum, and it will notify the supervisor that they need to do an evaluation. And they sit down with the employee. Employee does a self-eval too, just to address their accomplishments, their concerns, questions, goals. And so there's a meeting, they have a discussion, and then that will happen on every anniversary, regardless of a step increase or not.
And that's only once a year, you guys don't do a once a month where they're checking in with their employees and making sure that they're
That
doing
first,
well?
yeah, that first year, we do a probation, like we have a 6-month.
Yeah.
And our program does allow us for a check-in. So we're doing that for police and fire. So we have options on that, but that's really something a department director, if they want to do it more frequent than an annual, the policy requires an annual evaluation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one more question.
Counselor Lickey.
It's, when we reference the use of, city email for personal use, I was wondering if we could have more, I know there's an administrative policy that touches on social media and the city's use of, but also city employees on social media during their work time. I was wondering if that could be incorporated into policy, or is that something that internally you don't want to address? I just wonder, I know this, more than likely, this manual gets handed out upon hire, and social media has become something of a bane of employers and their employees on social media quite often at inappropriate times. So I just wondered if that was something that started as an admin policy and with the hope of working it into the actual personnel manual, or how that was looked at, because that tends to be a frequent conversation amongst employers.
Counselor Director Province.
Yeah, we do have a social media administrative policy. The personnel policy does reference that admin policy, so there is a section that tells you to go look at the administrative policy. Administrative policies can be updated or modified by the mayor. And we did recently update our social media policy because it's constantly changing. And so that allows us to update it. I think there is a section in there about employees' use of social media, but I don't know for sure if it's during work time. I'd have to reference back to it.
It's a great section, I don't see anything about time at work.
Oh, okay.
And personal.
Okay.
And it would be something that I think managers would appreciate having something to reference, because it can become an issue.
Is it your, do you want it to be none at all or limited?
I think if you're
Amount?
allowing for, if your kid's school communicates through social media, like some do, because it's the easiest way to, I think it could be similar to your email, where
Okay.
if your school knows that they can contact you via your work email the quickest, I think that's prudent. But being on it all day and commenting and,
Okay.
those kind of things should probably be addressed.
Yeah, and we will probably have to address in that there are some employees who are on social media for
That's
city
their job.
purposes. Yeah, so we have a couple of different departments who have social media users. Well, they'll post sometimes all day long, or jobs or updates, fire department, police department updates. So, but I think I understand the gist of what you're saying.
Just left SHRM, and that was a big topic, so just a suggestion.
So Director Province, would you tell me what your understanding is of what Counselor Lickey is asking for, so that there's no question in my mind?
Well, I mean, what I'm understanding is that you'd like to see a little bit more in the policy that references specifically the amount of time that an employee is on social media or commenting on social media during the performance of work. To a more limited basis, with the exception of those that are doing it as a component of their duties.
Correct.
Counselor Lickey, would you like Director Province to bring this back at some future meeting and change the personnel policy manual?
I think if you are comfortable with it in your administrative policy, that's fine. It's just something that has, within leadership conversations of employers, has been a hot topic, and I would just say that it would be prudent for you all to address.
You could, if you wanted, to take the administrative policy and put it into your personnel policy, but that's at your guys' discretion.
I feel like that kind of policy is something you should be able to change yourself.
Yeah, and when we did the social media policy, it was a lot of coordination with legal, mayor's office, PIO's office. So there's a lot of people who have their hands in it trying to make it. IT was involved in it, so it's got a lot of hands on it.
Otherwise, great job.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselors, any further comments, questions, motions? Changes to the manual, okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. That was good. Oh, boy. So I'm gonna move the gavel over to Council President Kleberg, because I'm going to do the presentation on the Pride Canyon Golf Course. Thank you for
Two
that.
hats today, huh?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Forsman, for laughing at me, but I'll do my best.
I believe in you, Mayor.
Council President Kleberg and City Council members, I've been asked to do a pinch hit today for the City of Lewiston Golf Course, so I'm going to do my best, and if you have questions, ask me. If I don't know, I'll get you the answer. So I want to start out by telling you that we've had our current operator, course, go under contract, permanent contract. We had a time period there, it was kind of temporary, so we transitioned through that, but from October 22 through April of 24, 18 months of a new contract. And so let me just share with you some of the things that have been going on at the golf course, not only with management change, but also the infrastructure of the course. We have made a lot of investments in the golf course, and I'll just throw some of them out here at you. The kitchen remodel, cart storage, complete rewiring and lighting, wash basin installed, shop and pro shop, repainting, a lot of repainting, bathroom heaters, on-course bathroom sinks and faucets repaired, pro shop lighting, scoreboard paint, restaurant countertop and cabinets, new stairs installed throughout the course, tee boxes, driving range, equipment in the kitchen such as fryer, sandwich bar, walk-in cooler, which is in progress, new carts that we purchased, some equipment, used equipment, John Deere mowers, fairway units, aerators, top dressers, and so forth. And then also, I think just as importantly and fun is there's been quite a few community events out the golf course, Christmas cookie decorating in 22, free kid clinic in 23, Halloween pumpkin carving, 23, Christmas sale month, 23, Christmas cookie decorating in Santa, Easter egg hunt this spring. It's been a busy first 18 months, water restriction with water tower going down. We still did just over $60,000 of operating revenue over expenses. With less than optimal course conditions, I think is an understatement. The capital plan, share that with you. I did not provide these to you. You don't have these, but I think this list that I just read from you should have. I think, John, you sent that out to you. The capital plan, this comes from their 24-25 golf course annual plan. It's a draft, but it's available out there, dated May 1, 2024. And for this year, they're looking at construction of a maintenance building, either behind the cart barn or demolish the existing one. Since there's already water and electricity in place, level some sod, T-leveling for the next 5 years, bunker refurbishment for the next 5 years. And then starting next fiscal year, not this one, they'd like to look into potentially adding an event center. Those are capital projects, capital equipment, spray rigs, T-mowers, greens mower, rough mower, fairway mower, and a Buffalo style mower, which I can't tell you what that is, but those are capital equipment purchases from now through fiscal year 28-29. That's approximately $300,000, $350,000. That's on the horizon. A couple of things that just to remind us all. We do pay, the current lease rate is paid out of our general fund, and there's a possibility, I think a good possibility, that the lease rate is going to go up. The airport has recently done an audit and assessment, so that is expected to go up quite a bit. They do that every 3 years. It's not decided yet how Courseco would include those fees into their rates. So we're going to talk about that, whether they'll pass it on to the users or if it's something that the city's going to pick up. It is, everything goes to our general fund right now. We currently pay approximately $65,000 to the water fund for water. That has not changed. Tell you a little bit about what's coming up this year for the 24-25 budget, which is the one they're setting right now. Paid rounds are expecting an increase of 5.6% over last year. Green fees and cart fees are projecting 7.1% increase. Memberships up 8.9%. Card program up 4.5%. On a proposed $5 price increase, which is good. Merchandise 5.1% increase. Driving range 9.4% increase. Food and beverage 3.9% increase. Which, if you have not been to the restaurant, they have really good hamburgers, French fries, and hot dogs and all kinds of foods. I would recommend it. Operating expenses, notable increases for the fiscal year include addition of an assistant superintendent, full fiscal year of operating utilizing the head levels, and maintenance required to provide excellent course conditions. And then insurance expenses are budgeted to increase by 10%. So that is a very quick rundown on what's going on at the airport. If you have some specific questions or general questions, I will try to answer them for you as best as I understand it. Councilor Spickelmeyer?
So in that, I was going through that Courseco's, that capital improvement plan and their projections, and a lot of that in there was statements with expectations of growth and all that. It seemed to be that the growth was to hopefully meet and be able to cover operating expenses for the golf course. But I never did see anything in there that talked about some return to the taxpayers for the $1 million we've spent in the last 2 years on that golf course.
So, Counselor, we put a lot of money into the golf course, capital projects, capital improvements, and we're going to continue to do that to kind of get that course up to par, if you will. And also, we continue to pay the water out there up to a certain amount. Anything over that, the operator would have to pay for that. But that's a good question, because in this next plan, we've asked them to start talking about revenue sharing. And so this next plan, my understanding is that it's going to include a revenue sharing component in it. Okay, it's not set, but here's what I have. They're saying what they would like to have, what they're proposing is that Courseco receive 15% of the year-over-year increase in net operating income. So for example, if they increase the net operating income by $20,000 as compared to the previous year, then they would receive an incentive fee of $3,000. The city would keep the $17,000. Okay, so as they begin to build rounds and bring other businesses in, presumably that net operating income is going to continue to increase, and we'll get a portion of that. And if it gets high enough, then that's going to be used to help fund current operations and maintenance and probably capital needs. And, you know, in a perfect world, we might even recover some money or make some money on that. But it's probably a few years down the road.
I say so.
I don't know if I can tell you much more than that. I don't have absolute dollar figures. You know, we continue to invest. If we stop investing in it, then, you know, obviously it won't cost us as much. But, you know, I think the trade-off is you see the forecasted growth that they are expecting. And coming out of a bad year last year when things didn't go well with water restrictions and everything, they still did pretty good. They came pretty close to hitting their target. So, you know, I have hope that things are going to continue to improve out there. They get my money. Counselor?
Any idea on what the potential cost and the lease rate may be? Percentage, I'm just curious if you've heard of it.
We currently pay, I think, $35,000, give or take, and it might go up to $85,000, $90,000, something like that. Is what I remember. The airport kind of gave us a heads up earlier this year, last fall, but it's in that range, and that again comes from their audit. When they go through and look at all their assets, they look at hangar rentals and, you know, other spaces, and everything has to be equitable and it has to be up to market.
Sure. Okay. Further questions? Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanna make sure I got my fiscal years correct. Is the maintenance building 235,000, that's in this current fiscal year's budget? Coming up, coming into, okay, so that will be a proposed. So the only thing we don't have listed is the fair market value lease adjustment.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, if you haven't been out there, I'm gonna put in a plug. They got good food out there. They've really invested in their kitchen, cleaned it up, put a nice countertop out there and other things. It's attractive. They got entertainment on the video screens. You can sit there and watch folks hit the green or not hit the green, those kind of things, but it's kind of fun, and they appreciate it when we, go out there and visit them. I did not mention this, but I think one of the biggest investments we made out there that is really making a difference is we paved that road coming off of O'Connor down to the parking lot. So that was a big one, which I think kept some people away. But having that paved all the way down to the parking lot now has really been an addition to that. I think it's bringing a lot of golfers there. I know in the springtime we get, a good handful of golfers that come down to Spokane, because I know some of them and I run into them out there. So I think it's a destination in the city, so.
I was wondering if we've done any advertising to let people know that we've done all these improvements to the golf course?
Counselor, that's a good question. I have not, is the straight answer. And I don't know what our PIO has put out on that. Couldn't even venture a guess.
I'm wondering if we could maybe have our social media at least reach out and make some kind of announcement to people to let them know that they we're doing improvements, go check it out.
But that's always a great idea, and I know that in their, I don't have their full plan here, but they have a marketing plan that they've put together, and it's a good one in terms of how they're gonna promote the golf course with that new plan, and I wish I had a full copy of it, but the golf course itself, that was part of the agreement we had with them, was that they have to do quite a bit of marketing, and they've done that, but I think there's some more coming. And we should be able to, work with them hand in hand, but. Share with you, Council President.
It's fair.
Is that it? Okay.
Turn the floor back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Council President. Councilors, next up, we have item C, Bryden Avenue Expansion Update. We have our Director, Dustin Johnson here. We're going to receive an update on the Bryden Avenue Corridor Project. Director Johnson, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. Back there. Real quick introduction as to why I'm here. Basically, Councilor Klein asked for an update at the April 8th work session, or the City Council meeting, and so this was the next available work session. So kind of give you an overview of, there's nothing pending, nothing looming, no decisions from the design, from the project perspective, but I've been talking to you for a while about this project. It's a very large project, so the timing is good, but just full disclosure, there's not anything pending. I'll get into the details of where the project is, but nothing too exciting to tell you about as far as decision-making. But I will say I've had some conversations with Councilor Klein, some members of the public, staff, and so this gave me an opportunity to kind of dive into the history of this project. And it was a good opportunity, enlightening on where we've been, where we're going, and how we can improve the process. So here we go, a little history lesson. So going back into, I think the first recognition I saw was from like 1975 about needing to address Bryden Avenue and access to the airport and getting traffic in an orderly way up into this area. And then, as you may or may not know, Southway Bridge was constructed in 1982. That was constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers as part of the dams and the levee system. And that bridge was constructed by federal dollars, by the Corps, administered by, and then handed off to the 4 entities that abut that bridge. So City of Lewiston, City of Clarkston, Nez Perce County, and Asotin County. And all 4 entities continue to maintain and operate that bridge to this day. I will say, looking at how traffic patterns, that would be the nexus of when things kind of really started changing from the historic travel patterns of the old LC Valley to the new LC Valley. You can look at Snake River Road, and I'll get into some of the traffic data that supports this, but look at Diagonal Street in Clarkston, look at Main Street, look at the bypass. You can see this time period changed a lot of how traffic flows, how people get to and go to work and home was radically changed when this bridge came in, and it's had a domino effect ever since then. So when you had Fleshman Way on the other side of the river, and then you had Bryden Canyon on this side of the river. So when Bryden Canyon opened in 1999, that was the catalyst that really impacted Bryden Avenue. And so I'll get into the details as far as the traffic volumes in the next slide, but needless to say, there was a significant change as how that neighborhood functioned after that Bryden Canyon opened. Bryden Avenue, at that point, the city started looking into what needed to be done in that area to mitigate some of the increased traffic. There was 2 significant studies done in the from 2006, there was a right-of-way study. In 2012, there was a corridor study, and they kind of built on traffic analysis. And in this period, I would say this is when a lot of controversy was taking place. The conversation of what should this corridor look like. You probably didn't quite have the development patterns that we're experiencing now as far as the East Orchards development, but people who lived further out were utilizing this. People are utilizing it to get home, utilizing it to get to the airport, but you could see the traffic pattern starting to change. The residents of that area didn't want it to be a thoroughfare. And so you could see a lot of land use conversations in the early 2000s. A lot of, from what I can tell, I went through and dug through the Tribune archives and read, sounded like some heated meetings and some disagreements of how they felt like this should move forward. By about 2014, I think, regardless of what the land use was supposed to be, it was agreed that Bryden Avenue needed to match the section of Bryden Canyon, which is 5 lanes, 4 travel lanes and a center turn lane, in order for it to function adequately for accesses and intersections. And so in 2014, the city applied for surface transportation funds. That's federal dollars that are allocated to the city. At this point, we get roughly $500,000 a year. That, I'll say, it's what calls federalize the project. And so if we do it with our own dollars, we only have to meet our local and state requirements. Once we bring in federal dollars, there's a higher threshold that we have to meet as far as bidding, wages, environmental, all of those things are in place. And so once you federalize a project, it's federalized forever. And so if we were to pull it out of the federal realm, we still have to meet all those expectations or reimburse those dollars. So 2014 was when requested those funds. It took 7 years for those funds to become available for the design. So Bryden Avenue design for phase 1, which is 4th to 7th, was awarded in 2021. And that's where we're at today, is the design of phase 1. As I was talking about the traffic volumes, you can kind of see, I took these numbers, I think these were out of the Tribune stories that I found. Bryden Avenue in itself, in 1995, the volume was just 9,500 trips a day. When the Bryden Canyon connected Bryden Avenue, it jumped to 15,000 trips a day. What's interesting is that number is not significantly greater in the last 25 years. Since 1999, it's at 15,000. I was trying to get some numbers updated in there, but we're still somewhere, we're under 20. So between 15,000 and 20, depending on which intersection you're looking at, we're about 17.5. So you're not seeing, you saw that significant change in 1999 when you opened up Bryden Canyon. Growth continues to go in the East Orchards, people are adapting their travel ways, but we're not seeing, you look at 1995 to 99, you'd think, oh yeah, we'd be up to 45,000 trips, and that's just not what we've seen or experienced. The other interesting thing is if you look at the numbers from Southway Avenue and Snake River Avenue, lower down in our transportation network, you can see the trips dropped significantly. So Snake River, or Southway Avenue was 20,000 trips, and it was reduced by more than half. And so if you think about, if you live down here in downtown and you wanted to get to the airport, you either use Southway to get there or you went up 21st Street. And so now you could go right down Snake and then right up Bryden and you'd be up at the airport. And so there's all kinds of numbers. I dove into this, and I don't want to tell you how much time, especially in my own personal life, of starting looking at numbers and seeing what happened. But it is an interesting rabbit hole, but basically shows you the impact of the bridges and Bryden Canyon and Fleshman Way had on the valley and the traffic patterns that we've experienced. And we're still trying to catch up to them today. So just a real high-level overview of where the project is. So this is the budget estimates for moving forward. This is not the money that we've expended. We've expended probably about $1 million to date. And I shouldn't say we, the STP, our federal allocation has paid for $1 million roughly in design. There's a local match, and that was paid for by the URA. So we have not expended any dollars out of our transportation funds for this project. But you can see projecting forward, we got to close out the engineering design. Construction at today's prices, which continue to escalate, are 8.5. There's inspection, administration, and reporting that goes along with federalized projects. And then the estimate for right-of-way purchase at 3.3 million. So if you include the 1 million that we've expended today, that would put it around $15 million total in today's numbers. And that is, if we continue to do what we always have been doing, we're going to rely on federal dollars, and it'll take us, I don't know how long, decades to build up to $15 million divided by 500,000. That's how long it's going to take us to get to that project to become completely constructed. And that means that dollar figure will move farther away because we're saving.
Thank you, Director. And just to remind everybody, phase one, we're only talking about 4th Street to 7th Street.
Yep, that is just phase one. And so when this closes out, as we're budgeting the project today with only federal dollars, you build that out however many, 15 million divided by 500,000, so that's 30 years. Then you start over for phase two, doing design, right-of-way, construction. So that was the pressing part. I will say, as I introduced, we're not in a point where we can really make any decisions. The design is sitting at 95% complete. Right-of-way plans are at 95% complete. They won't let us complete those until the environmental portion is done. We're in the midst of it. It's taking longer than they thought it would because it's a federal project, and this is something we don't typically do all the time. We're expecting that to be completed in the next 6 months, which means we can finalize the design, finalize the right-of-way plans, and start with right-of-way acquisition in 2025. And also, we need to make sure there's funds available to do the right-of-way acquisition. And so that it may take a year or 2 or 3 to build up adequate funds to get to that $3 million to acquire the right-of-way. And so that takes a while to build it before I can give you a date for construction. And so what I'm telling you today is we need to finish up the design, the right-of-way, the environmental, and button that up. At that point, I think it's a good time to have a higher level conversation with the council as far as how do you want to prioritize this project? This project has been number one in the transportation plan. It's been put back into 2014 when it was put forth for STP funds. That was the number one priority. It's still sitting there as our number one priority. we've put, surface transportation, funds away. We're focusing on Main Street, we focused on 21st Street, there's a Thane corridor study. This project has funding, but it's, as I've already addressed, it is a ways out there. So I think at that point, once we get this thing finalized, there's time for a discussion of where does phase 2 come into this and where do local dollars come into this? That is really about all I have. I have the typical section and then kind of the map of the design as it is today. But that's all I really have to share with you today.
Thank you, Director. Counselors, Counselor Klein.
How long at its current state do you think that road will last before having to be redone? Will it make it to that point?
No, and that's true for the entire corridor from 4th all the way to Thane. The pavement is in bad shape, and so, yeah, that is a very good point, that the pavement, as I think I discussed previously, is not built on optimum subgrade. So you can do a mill and overlay, but you're still gonna just mash that pavement down and it's not gonna serve a purpose. You can let it go to dirt if it's gonna be 30 or 50 years to get that section in. So yeah, the city's facing a situation similar to 21st Street, where you have suboptimum base course and not funding that is immediately available. So yeah, that is going to trigger a deeper conversation as far as what we just talked about and then the condition of the asphalt.
Counselor Spickelmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Director, isn't there also a plan this year to fix either side of 5th where that was? There's the rough spots on either side of it?
The ruts on 5th going
On Bryden, either side of it, yeah.
the ruts on that side there's mastic that was put down that needs to be adjusted, but the bulk of the work has been done. There's no, because yeah, when you ride through, if you're going on Bryden going east or west, it doesn't really ride great. It's not rutted like it was before on the 5th intersection, but kind of where the fire station property is, there's mastic put down there. It will flatten out, and we may have to help it flatten out a little bit more with like warmer weather, because we put it down in the fall. It doesn't look good, but it doesn't ride as bad as the ruts. But long answer to say nothing's planned beyond just standard maintenance.
Counselor Klein.
Do you know if those federal dollars or the URA funding could go towards just making it a 3-lane, like a nice 3-lane with sidewalk instead of a 5-lane?
We could look, I mean, going back to, because I talked with you and my question was, and it predated my conversation with you, was why was a 3-lane never considered? And essentially it was that it's at a standard 3-lane capacity tops out about 15 to 17,000 cars per day, which is where it's at now. And so I believe the engineers said, why would you design a car or a thoroughfare for 3 lanes when it's at that capacity for the 30 to 50 year design life? So they just went straight into either a 4-lane section or a 5-lane section. And the only way you can make a 4-lane section work is you restrict access. You put a raised median down the middle of it and you restrict accesses. But since that's there's so many properties, so many businesses, so many residences, you couldn't restrict access. So that's why they went to a 5-lane. Part of that $200,000 that's in that final engineering design is, once the design is completed, and since it's taken 20 years to get here, is to go back and reevaluate the 4-lane section, 5-lane section, the 3-lane section, roundabouts versus signals, to kind of go through and make sure, kind of as a last test of, this is what has been designed, and here's why it's preferred over any of the alternatives. So that is set to be done as they wrap up the project.
Follow-up?
Counselor Klein.
And we saw the high volume that was at Southway previously, and when we added Bryden, we saw the decline on Southway. So couldn't that be said the same if we make another off-ramp to divert off of Bryden? It could reduce the amount of traffic we get on Bryden?
Are you talking about pushing it onto?
Like Preston, like making the off-ramp onto Preston, so people that actually live in that area could
access it better.
Yeah, there is, I mean, that's the challenge of the orchards, you know, because you've got Preston, Warner, Bryden, Burl are kind of your larger, whereas you've got, you know, Airway, Linden, some of those other smaller ones that you could never funnel in. And so we've looked at, you know, some of those smaller ones, make those one way. We've looked at different scenarios and none of them really rose to the top. And we've looked for the magic bullets to say, could we do this improvement and put traffic, you know, somebody going to this destination, say the example would be the high school. If we divert traffic on this road and improve it and widen it, would that take funnel the traffic off of 10th and Thane? I don't know. But we continue to look at it, and it's kind of a domino effect because we know people want to go east and people want to go west on that. And people are already experienced, you know, 5th and Bryden, it gets backed up right about now. And people are starting to turn down and go down Burl. And that's something that, you know, in the hierarchy of a transportation network, you want your arterials to carry the heavy load, collectors to distribute that out and keep people off your local so they're not cutting through neighborhoods. But as I said, the domino effect of you get into some topography, you get into some short, narrow right-of-way, and trying to find that perfect solution of connecting drivers to their destination and making sure that they're not diverting and finding their own Google path where, you know, Google Maps told me this is the fastest way and it's an alley and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Councilor Lidkey?
Director Johnson, there's a lot of big rig traffic that goes up and down, obviously Brighton, but there's a lot that seems to be on stretches of roads that maybe they shouldn't be. So, you know, coming off of over by the airport, Southport, is there a way that we can somehow restrict or at least confine that so that we can save what little bit of road we have left for mainstream drivers? I don't know what you would call them, but it just seems like that, I mean, the divots that we had to take care of at 5th and Bryden, those were coming from the fact that we were getting trucks from the Southport. I know because I saw them almost topple over as they got deeper. So is there something that we can do to keep trucks off of there to maybe save that road at all?
Yeah, we've talked about that, and there were some complaints that came in over the weekend. This was a Jake brake issue, people using them different. The problem that we've had is oftentimes it becomes the whack-a-mole, where it's like, okay, we're gonna try and save this intersection because that's the one that's getting hammered today. And then they're gonna go on this intersection now, and it's even worse that we didn't really think that they would go that route. So we have had a lot of conversations. I mean, Avista's been doing a lot of investment in some of their substations, and so they've been making some big hauls, heavy hauls going up our streets. And so we've looked at kind of where the pavements are adequate, and I'll be honest, you know, the arterials they were not, for the most part, designed to function the way they're functioning today. I mean, we are behind the 8 ball right now, and so it's not any fault of anybody in this room. It's just the cards that we've been dealt, and we wanted, you know, this council and the previous council has started putting money away into the arterial reconstruction. It's just going to take a while to get these, you know, between grants, federal allocations, and then local dollars to get these taken care of. And then trying to find those Band-Aid fixes where we can kind of direct heavy haul traffic away from the trouble spots. I didn't attend this meeting or this conversation to be as depressing as it's turning out to be, but you know, I also want to feel like I need to be upfront and honest where there is some need, and I think this council has put the funds there to address the need. It's gonna take a while. I didn't answer your question.
Councilor, I guess I'll take a shot at it. In our city code, we have established truck routes. And, you know, if council wanted to visit something, they could certainly do that, you know, where there might be a change. You know, we've had, as Director Johnson mentioned, we've had some complaints over the last couple of days about heavy truck traffic coming up out of, I guess, south of the airport, but up 7th Street, you know, and operating early in the morning and stuff like that. I did call the contractor today and let him know that he's on our radar screen, and he was very happy to talk with his drivers. But, you know, some of it comes down to enforcement too. So, you know, if folks are where they shouldn't be, then, you know, hopefully, you know, we're enforcing our own rules so that people understand, you know, it's education and enforcement is what it is. But I know that Chief Cusick has his officers scattered all over the city trying to do the best they can right now, but,
I mean, the mayor did get to the point I was trying to make eventually, but was we can post streets. You've seen them postings for bridges, we can post them for streets. We have truck routes designated, but as I said, sometimes we like to keep them on the designated truck routes, even though those are starting to fail. The alternative is worse. But there's the component of, we can look at limiting, axle loads. We can reevaluate our truck routes and just see if we can, manipulate what we've got to make it a little bit more functional.
okay, well, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your presentation.
So you up again?
Oh, kind of. Sorry. So our next item is Roman numeral 5D, proposed lease with LC Valley Youth Resource Center. Discussion on a proposed request to lease city property to the LC Valley Youth Resource Center Incorporated. So this is listed as an action item. And what I'm going to ask is, we have Michelle King here today. And if she would please introduce herself for the record, and then maybe Michelle, just give kind of a high-level outline of what we've discussed and where we're at, and then I will speak to the council about what they might need to do next to help you in your pursuit. Clerk Rocky's going to pull up on the map here, our GS map, and show you where we're talking about.
While she gets it zoomed in, my name is Michelle King, and I am president and co-founder of the LC Valley Youth Resource Center. I hope everyone is aware of what we do at the Youth Resource Center. We currently serve Lewiston and Clarkston teens ages 12 to 17 who are in need of overnight shelter, food, showers. We do prizes if you complete your homework, healthy social activities, and we've been privileged that last year we served 292 individual youth. Currently have 4 kiddos basically living full-time at the Youth Resource Center, but we have beds for up to 16 per night. So, no, go ahead, please, you do, yeah, absolutely. I do have brochures about our current programs if you're interested, but we're here today to talk about what's next. So, we have been very fortunate to be able to work with Lewiston and Clarkston youth up until their 18th birthday. So if you imagine a kiddo who's, oh, yes, thank you. Kiddos come to us, some of them fleeing domestic violence, or perhaps their parents are members of the recovery community and they're struggling in their own process, and so the kiddos are safe with us while they work through that. What happens on their 18th birthday has, well, I'm just going to say it like this. We've tried many things that don't work. We've tried partnering with other agencies. We can say that we've actively looked for rentals, but an 18-year-old with no credit, no income, and still in high school doesn't necessarily make the best rental candidate. We have had some host housing situations and some partners who had facilities that like a room where a kiddo could stay, but that room didn't necessarily have access to a shower or a kitchen. So it wasn't a good setup. So what we are proposing is to build the village. We're on this piece of property right here. So the United Way has accepted our offer to purchase their building. And then the city owns the land behind it. There is another piece that has another owner that we're connecting with to discuss things that are going on. And what we're proposing is creating a transitional housing village under the city's new code. A lot of that has to go through the conditional use permits process, so I'm gonna stick more with who we're talking about than the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about. But really, it's housing with training wheels. It's teaching kids how to be a good citizen, helping them finish high school, and then setting them up to win. They would be able to stay there until their 21st birthday. Again, they won't be of drinking age or smoking age, so there won't be any of that going on there. And we will have a host on site 24/7. We are modeling after a federal program for the transitional living program. Seems like it was a lot of words. We hope to be able to build 20 sleeping units and host 20 kiddos and help them through this transition. On their 21st birthday or by their 21st birthday, we will have worked with them to make sure that they are have first, last deposit and a place to go. So.
Thank you, Michelle. So why don't I do my part, and then I know that Jennifer's in the back, and she'll wave to me if we step over the line, so hopefully we don't. But as Michelle mentioned, if this project were to move forward, it'll end up in front of planning and zoning, and so we just have to be careful what we can and cannot discuss here, and Jennifer will help us with that if we get too close or too far over the line. But basically, this piece of property here, this is the outskirts of the United Way that Michelle was talking about, that she has had some discussions with them. This piece of ground right here is owned by the city of Lewiston, as well as this piece right here. This piece here is owned by a third party, and as Michelle said, she's been in contact with him. This is where she would propose to put her village and other improvements to this land. So what the council needs to think about, and here's how this could happen if you were at all interested in this, but you would have to acknowledge that the property is not currently needed for city purposes. That would be the first decision you'd make. The second one would be to direct staff to draft a lease agreement with the Youth Resource Center. And then thirdly, today, you would give the Youth Resource Center permission to apply for CUP in the meantime. So my understanding is that even though we own the land, the council can give Michelle King, the Youth Resource Center, to pursue a CUP with planning and zoning, with the understanding that this whole project would be conditioned, her agreement, her pursuit of the United Way property, I think, and if you said it, I apologize, but is conditioned on being able to have access to this other land too. So Michelle and others are working to put this together, but they need some help from the city, some assurances that in fact the land is not needed, that they can move forward with that, they can ask for this CUP, and this would all be drafted, put in the agreement that this was all conditioned on all of this coming together. So did I get pretty close to that, Jennifer, too?
One thing to mention is that the transitional housing villages in the city of Lewiston have to meet the zoning requirements of being in M1, M2, C4, and C6, which for those who've been on the council a bit, you know that we've had many conversations about finding property that's in those very specific zones. It's a very limited capacity, especially to be able to do something like this. And so this is just kind of the perfect setup. And I don't want to get into what we would say in the conditional use permit, so I'm gonna pause there.
Councilor Schroeder?
Mayor, do we need to go ahead and make a motion that we consider that piece of property suitable for surplus?
The three things that we need to do today, if I understand it right, and I'll just keep checking in with Jennifer and Dangano, is that the council would need to acknowledge that the property is not currently needed for city purposes, so that would be part of the discussion or the motion. To direct staff to draft a lease agreement with the Youth Resource Center, and we don't have the terms of that right now, but that's not the important part of it. And then thirdly, to give the Youth Resource Center permission, so you, the council, would be giving them permission to apply for a CUP in the meantime while this whole project was being put together. So they can go to council, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we, the property owners, have through this agreement given them permission to apply for a CUP on this property that we own that they would like to lease.
And before I forget, I think I should go ahead and make that motion, okay? If I could, so I can.
Okay, could you say it really loud so that Jennifer
Yes.
can hear too?
I will, as long as I know if I'm saying it correctly. I'd like to make a motion that we, say that we agree that piece of property is not necessarily needed by the city, and we'd like to draw up a lease agreement with the Youth Resource Center, and we want to provide them with permission to apply for a CUP. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, close enough.
Good enough.
Do we have a second?
I'm looking for a second.
Second it for discussion.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Councilor Lidkey, that City Council acknowledge that the property is not currently needed for city purposes, to direct staff to draft a lease agreement with the Youth Resource Center for use of that property, and then to give the Youth Resource Center permission to apply for a CUP in the meantime. Councilor Klein.
So in the past, this piece of property was up for discussion about being sold. Would that make more sense to sell it and put it on the market for either them to buy or the person that owns the other piece of property and have it out of our hands and in theirs?
Well, if you're asking me, Councilor, I think, that's certainly something the council can do. I think that came before the council previously, and that decision was not made to do that at the time. So maybe someone else on the council, Councilor Lidkey?
I guess my question would have been the same, but also that we determined that we was not going to be, there was neighborhood kids that we needed to consider, so I'm just asking for clarification because this isn't a lease of a temporary building. This property would be permanently altered, correct, with structures built on them. So I would agree with Councilor Klein, if we can walk away, it becomes a cleaner situation for everyone involved, I would think.
Councilor Kleberg?
Well, I was on the council when we went around the block with the young kids that lived in that neighborhood, and quite a few years ago. But there was it was a big deal, and the council passed, and we've kept the property. I know it's not the best park ground that we have, but, as you look at downtown, we've already lost the last piece of green space on Main Street to the courthouse. This is a piece of green space that, could be brought back to life. I've just got some issues with that. As we give that away, then we lose it. And everybody says, well, we're gonna have a community park. Well, we may or may not. But it's still a long ways away from there to the community park.
Yeah, I think Ms. Jennifer has the comment with this. Jennifer, please introduce yourself for the record.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Tangano, Assistant City Attorney for the City of Lewiston. And to answer your question about surplus versus leasing the properties, there's many reasons why the city may want to do either one. Ultimately, it's a policy decision. When you surplus a property, there's no guarantee on who's gonna actually acquire the property because you have to go through the public auction process. However, if you lease the property, then the city is in the position to determine who they enter into leases with. And there's different processes for both. For a lease, you just have to determine that the property is not needed for city purposes, and then ultimately that the lease terms are just and equitable. There are gonna be considerations about improvements to the property and how those will come into play as far as the terms of the lease, so that the Youth Resource Center is getting value from the investments that they're putting into the property, as well as the city receiving those just and equitable lease terms.
Counselors, questions for
What was the
Jill?
last word you said? Oh, lease terms?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I really didn't hear it, but then
Lickey?
So with a lease, we own the property, which means we would be, I'm assuming, writing an agreement that would release us from any obligation of permanent structures. However, I know that that area experienced flood damage when we had the reservoir. So again, I think I just need to fully understand what is pros and cons of either leasing or allowing somebody to purchase the property outright to take away, putting taxpayers on the hook for things of that nature.
Because I don't know what the lease terms are going to be or what particular requests the Youth Resource Center is going to have as far as protection for the city, there's typically indemnification clauses that will go into it. And the city does have processes for construction and building in flood areas. Considering that there was a recent flood event, that does put the Youth Resource Center on notice of the possibility of flooding for the area. So that would be a consideration for them in making the lease and choosing this site for that purpose. However, the pros and cons, I don't think that I would be able to really give that to you now because there's a lot of different considerations that would go into that. And I'd be happy to follow up in an advice letter to you about pros and cons of disposing of this property at surplus versus leasing the property.
Schroeder?
This is an opportunity, a last opportunity for kids. And these are kids in our valley that are here. They're not coming in on a bus and being dumped. These are kids that live here and that are disenfranchised from the rest of us. And this is one opportunity to give them the skills to learn how to live on their own. I can't even imagine what these children have gone through, nor do I want to really know. I just know that every opportunity a city has to help out children should be done. And this is a very non-intrusive way. I mean, there's going to be controls and talking and contracting and leases that are gonna work out to be fine. I don't even think that I have those concerns. I just think that the concern for our youth in this valley should be utmost for the city council. That is our youth, and they are going to be the adults in this community. Do we want them to have the skills that these people know how to train, and they are vetted, they've been doing this, they know how to instill the skills. And I thank them very much every day for what they do.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Spicklemeyer?
I like the idea of the facility. I think it's a great idea, but I do feel, I think, Counselor Lidke, is that I would like to see all the legalities, see our options before we vote on moving forward with the facility. I think it's very gray right now, you know, what might be down the road. You know, if we improved everything up front and then try to find it later on. I'm still on with doing it, you know, you don't have to shake your head at me, but we need to see the legalities of what's going on first.
We do, and we'll see, there's a process in place.
Can I hear the motion again then? Because I think I'm confused by the motion. What we're approving.
Okay, I will do my best. Thank you. Counselors, the motion under consideration is to acknowledge that the property is not currently needed for city purposes, direct staff to draft a lease agreement with the Youth Resource Center for that property, and to give the Youth Resource Center permission to apply for a CUP in the meantime. That is the motion. Councilor Lidkey?
I, first of all, want to be very clear, I am 100% for giving opportunity to children. This is about protection for Mrs. King, and the proposition that's in front of us. I would feel more comfortable giving permission to move forward with a CUP, so that in that process, you may find what you are going to need from us in that lease agreement. To draft one now without those things in place, I think is not in protection of you and moving forward. That was my whole thought process, was not to say no to any of the ideas being thrown. But I have done a CUP, I have been involved with other things that have come up in front of planning and zoning and this council. I would like to make sure it's clean, forthright, and we're not throwing any surprises. That was my whole position.
I'm gonna see if Michelle has a comment.
So that was gonna, thank you, Councilor Lekeek, because that's, even if the lease was drafted, we would still make everything conditional on the passage of the conditional use permit, because we need to work through all the details, but we can't even begin to have those conversations with, I mean, you can draw all the drawings you want, but until you have permission to do something to the land, putting a lot of money into drawings is a little, so but it all starts with the city's approval for the CUP. So if you could, I mean, in speaking with community development, we can't even apply for a CUP because right now it is designated as a park. So if you could do the steps that we need to do to be able to apply for the conditional use permit, that would be my ask.
Go ahead.
Mayor, I was
Councilor
wondering
Klein?
how we can direct our legal team to draft up an advice letter on the comparisons between the lease and the sale, the surplus, before continuing.
Jennifer?
Thank you, Councilor Klein. Just simply asking for that, I can put something together. Right now, for the considerations, I have the pros and cons of a surplus versus a lease agreement. If there's anything else in particular that you'd like me to consider or to add in there, I'm happy to do so. Other than just the basics of what is the difference between the two, what are their processes, and how that could affect this particular ask of the city, and then the pros and cons of what each would potentially be.
Do that?
Yes.
And can you go ahead and repeat them tonight for us? Reread the option, those two, the difference between a lease and a sale?
So basically, the difference between a lease agreement and a surplus sale open process, without going into legal advice about the two, is generally a surplus requires a public auction of the property, and the city does not have the ability to choose who is ultimately the highest bidder. If there is no highest bidder and the public auction closed with no bids, then the city would be in a position to market the property and sell it, similar to how we're doing with the Bollinger Building, where we had declared that property surplus, had a public auction, there was no buyer, and then we marketed the property. And then at that point, we were able to select a buyer among those who had submitted letters of intent. Whereas a lease, the city still owns the property, and the city gets the option of determining who it leases the property to, as long as the property is not needed for city purposes, and then the terms of the lease are just and equitable.
Councilor Forsman?
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we would, if we said yes to this and we approved, we would write up a lease with terms and conditions that would then come back to us to whether we like them, dislike them, needed to add things of that such.
That is correct, and then there would be a process of negotiating with the Youth Resource Center for them to propose changes to a lease that we would potentially provide. Because there are different legal considerations on either side, we would draft it obviously in our best interests, and they would have hopefully their own legal counsel to advise them on lease terms that would be in their best interest, and we would work together on getting an agreeable lease for both parties that we would then present to the council.
Councilor Forsman?
I have no problem with this idea of using that property for that. I think it's important that we care about our youth, and getting them ahead, a leg up. I even know kids that are coming out of college and their parents even help them get a little bit of a credit score and still have a hard time getting a place to live. And so I can imagine just even adding a child's life past on top of that would make it that much harder, as well as expenses and stuff. But I do have to say, I feel it was brought a little impromptu. I don't feel like we had a lot of reading material or anything to go through. So that's why it's a little hard for me, just because I feel like we had a lot of time to metabolize it. But being that if we do this lease, it's not like we're holding ourselves, this is it, and we're going for it, but we are at least starting the process and the pros and cons. I think it's important for at least us to step that and start the conversation and allow them to do their part. I'm not hearing a lot of other options we could go with. Am I correct in that? As far as, I mean, we kind of have two options on how to help them get the ball rolling.
That would be correct. The city is limited in what it can do directly with potential housing providers, because there are state laws that prevent a city from working directly to provide affordable housing. And so we are limited in what we can do in those areas. And part of the reason why there's not been too much is staff has not devoted a whole lot of time at this point towards the particular request from the Youth Resource Center, because that is a project that will involve a lot of staff time. And so before doing that, we've brought this to the council to ensure that staff time is being used appropriately. And as far as some of the more specifics, also because the city council would be the potential board that an appeal to the CUP would go to, all information related to the details of the CUP is governed by the Idaho Land Use, the LULUPA process, and so it's very limited on what can be heard off the record, so outside of a formal public hearing, which would require notice and publications and the opportunity for a lot of different parties to have their input. And so we are trying to protect that process by limiting any information that would be presented to you now, because anything beyond that would potentially be outside of that and in violation of those procedures.
You have the motion before you. Councilor Schroeder, it's your motion. Do you have any last comments before I ask for the vote? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Challenge my hearing, they can do that. That's new in our code because I don't hear well, but it sounded like it passed to me.
Yes, I heard.
Thank you. Thank you, councilors. Next, we go to Roman number 6, unfinished and new business. City councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the city council or an item that may come before the city council in the foreseeable future. It shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Councilor Forsman.
You know I had some? I did. Okay. First up is the Orchid Award is May 11th. That is this Saturday. Be there, enjoy snacks and history at the Territorial Building. Again, that is the Orchid Award, May 11th at 11 a.m. Territorial Building. Also, I got to use the QAR codes on Main Street. I highly suggest you tell people about it and use it. Some cool history there and who's involved in the city and who helps make that happen and continuing to try to keep our history alive. So, but that's pretty much all I had. Orchid Award this Saturday. Be there.
Thank you, Councilor, for sharing that. Other councilor comments? Councilor Klein?
So I've been doing the Citizen Academy with the police department, and I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed that class, and I did my ride-along with a few officers, a 10-hour long, got to see a couple shifts, got to help with a couple arrests, and
Did you put
be part
handcuffs
of
on
that.
them?
No, I got to hold them, but yeah, seeing the behind the scenes and seeing what they go through on the day-to-day was very beneficial, and I hope that more people can experience that next year. It was something that I didn't even realize existed until I joined the council. Having that as an opportunity, I feel like more people should do that.
Okay, city boards and commission liaison updates. Question, Councilor Schroeder.
Thank you. May 23rd is Public Works Day. All the kids gotta take their grandma and grandpa to it, and they will have as much fun as the kids do, so. Oh, 12 to 1? No, 12 to 2? No, that's not correct.
I have it.
Good.
Stand by for internet. Slow. It was up. Well, we could have called Dustin. Okay, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
At the fairgrounds. Thank you.
Okay,
The first development impact meeting will happen tomorrow at 10 a.m.
did you hear that, everyone? Okay, it's just me that doesn't hear, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councilor. 4? All right. Mayor comments. I actually have a couple here that I want to share. The first one is that we were talking about the performance evaluations earlier. I read every single evaluation that's done in the city, and I find it to be very valuable. I learn a lot about the city and our employees, and it gives me a lot of feedback that I need so that I can understand the different jobs, the different roles in the city, and then the needs of the department. And then I will discuss some of those with the department director. So I find it very valuable. And I have one that I just want to share with you, leave the names out, but we have an employee of the Lewiston Police Department that someday wants to be working in a task force for the Idaho the Internet Crimes Against Children, digital forensic cases, and that is some very heavy work. And we have an individual that's seeking out as much training as he can. He was recently selected to attend a 3-week training at the National Computer Forensic Institute in Alabama. A very sought-after training. The United States Secret Service Field Office out of Spokane picks people in the area to attend. This is based off of knowledge, previous trainings, and work products. So this is a huge accomplishment for one of our city employees, and we're very proud of that accomplishment and the work that he's going to do in the future to help us in these types of investigations. So congratulations to Chief Cusick and your staff. Thank you for your commitment to that. That is heavy, heavy work. And also I want to say thank you to our volunteers. I know we have a lot of volunteer groups that are active out there every day. We don't forget about you. Also, another employee, one of our school resource officers, whether we know it or not, spends a lot of her time counseling students at the high school, and so we're very grateful for the role that she plays in our community. Again, working with our youth. You know, sometimes we get pretty busy in our days and we don't think about what everyone does in their day-to-day jobs, but a couple of very special individuals are at the city, and I just want to say thank you to them. We got a card from, and I'll read it to you.
Oh.
Send one around.
Thank you. Take one down.
On behalf of the Idaho State Society Daughters of the American Revolution, I want to thank you for your proclamation and support of hidden heroes and your community's military caregivers. Your commitment is important and appreciated. As other cities and counties follow their lead, together we'll create a powerful network of support and compassion for those caregivers who do so much behind the scenes. We're so grateful for your commitment to them. So they sent us a nice thank you card and one of their pens. So I just passed those around to you. It looks like a nice pen. And I think those are my 4 announcements. That brings us to agenda topics, item 6D. Councilor Spickelmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks and Rec Department has some information for us on the Burt Lips pool restoration. So I'd like to make a motion to add the Burt Lips pool repair updates to the June 3rd work session.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Spickelmeyer, second by Councilor Forsman to add Burt Lips pool. What did you call it, Councilor?
What's that?
The repair update or something? We just had
Some options for us to move forward with if we want to do the repairs.
for the June 3rd work session. No discussion allowed. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We will put it on the June 3rd work session. Thank you, Counselor, for that. Counselor Ledke?
I'd like to put on that same work session, a discussion on surplusing city property and review of a couple of parcels that we've already discussed in the past. And I'm happy to take that conversation on.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Lidke, second by Councilor Spickelmeyer to put on the June 3rd work session a discussion of surplus properties in the city. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councilors, any other agenda topics? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Lidke, second by Councilor Schroeder to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.